Well, hey, Marissa, looks like we're in a different place today, right?
Yeah.
So we've actually come back home. So we're back in the church. Unfortunately, we had some technical issues over at Pepper Mills that didn't have anything necessarily to do with them. So we are here in the church to guarantee a live stream. Now, we do have our whiskey of the week, which you got to see over there.
Mm-hmm.
We are unfortunately in the church, so
we can't drink it.
We can't drink it as much as we would love to. We can't drink it, but so we're showcasing this week Balvenie Caribbean Cask. I've been a fan of Balvenie for a very long time. It's a nice light Scotch, kind of a buttery honey almond kind of flavor, but this has become a new favorite of mine because after they finish the Balvenie, they will then put it into rum casks, and so it'll get that real nice rum spice to it, and it does give it that nice darker flavor, darker than the Balvenie Doublewood or a regular 12-year Balvenie. So this has become a new Scotch for me. So those of you that are out there, I'm back to the single malt whiskeys. I had a commentary about having Irish whiskey. Okay, fine. So we're back to the Scotch whiskeys. So anyway, if you have a chance, that's available all over the place. Give that a try. All right.
If we can't drink it in the church, can we still have it in the alley behind the church?
We can have it right in the parking lot. That's right. In the parking
lot,
lot, as long as we're 500 feet away. Okay. That's
and as long as we don't drink and drive.
Yes, please, no drinking and driving. Absolutely.
Drinking and parking, I think, is okay, though, right?
Drinking and parking is okay. Is okay. Couple of quick things to start off. Again, the comments are the comments and the questions are really kind of heating up. I mean, we're getting a lot of really great questions, and I think now where I have to be very careful is that I have grown up in the Greek Archdiocese of America, so my flavor and my position is kind of tainted on kind of what happens in America. So a lot of times with other countries, because we don't necessarily live there, we might not have the latest and greatest information. So I've had a couple of really great commentaries that have kind of corrected some of the positions that I've been a little bit misguided on. So although I'm fairly confident about the Greek Archdiocese, the Antiochian Church here in America, the OCA Church here in America, I guess what I want to do is just kind of be careful if we get questions that are concerning other areas of the world. I do appreciate the commentary that I get because that helps to educate me. So this clearly shows you that I am in no way the know-it-all. Maybe I think I know the know-it-all, but so anyway, I just want to be cautious to that to stay. And again, I do appreciate those comments. All right, we have two other questions, unresolved questions that did not get answered last time. So the first one was a commentary, and again, I know usually you're chiming in right about now, and I'm keeping you,
okay.
I'm kind of running you over here. But one of the questions was based on, the question was, do the Muslims worship the same God that we do? And I said, yes, they do. And then a commentary came back in and says, well, I don't know if that's necessarily true. So what I have to do is I have to explain myself a little bit more. Before I do that, I will say that probably one of the best books out on commentary dialogue between Orthodox and Muslims is again, Two Traditions, One Space by Papa Dimitriou. Can you see that on there? Does that work? This is an excellent book, and it's going to be where a lot of my quotations come from. There have been two fathers, if I want to say fathers of the church, that have entered into a theologically based dialogue with the Nation of Islam. Now, the one happened shortly after with the Prophet Muhammad, and that was John of Damascus. And John of Damascus was an Arab. Okay, so he was living in those lands at the time, And so he had a series of dialogues with the imams at that time and also with the emirs. The second one in about the 13th century was St. Gregory of Palamas. I don't know if you've ever heard of St. Gregory of Palamas. No. He was on his way to Constantinople and got by ship and got hijacked by the Ottomans and was held captive. And during that period of captivity, he entered into dialogue with the emir of that time, and there was 3 dialogues that took place. And the purpose of both of those dialogues was to have a discussion about the Nation of Islam versus Orthodoxy. All right. So what some people don't necessarily know, and I think is important to talk about, and Papa Dimitriou brings it out very, very well in his book, is we have to understand, at least from our perspective, where the evolution of Islam comes from. All right. So there's a basis for everything. Again, not asking you to disagree with the Orthodox Church would obviously disagree with kind of this evolution, but this is evolution from their perspective. Okay. So as they see it now, they see salvation as coming in 3 distinct steps. Okay, and I'm reading again right out of the book. So this first step is obviously Judaism, right? So Moses comes down with the 10 Commandments. We already have Abraham that comes down. So Judaism with the great patriarchs, prophets, is God's first testament with his people, and that becomes the Mosaic law. So the covenant is the Mosaic law, all right? So unfortunately, that doesn't work, right? There's always, as we see in the Old Testament, there's problems. And so now we see this second stage. God now sends, and again, I'm going to use now Islamic terms, God sends his prophet Jesus to reorganize the people of God and establish a new covenant. Now we have the New Testament, which we as Christians would recognize. Unfortunately, he writes, the Christian world was led into wars and conflicts that were extremely intense, which we would agree with. The Crusades, right? The tortures, things like that. The schisms between the East and the West, right? And especially around the 6th century in portions of the Arab world. So there was troubles there. A feeling that this second covenant between God and humanity was leading now to a dead end. And again, Muslim perspective, not ours, okay? Consequently, a third testament, that of the Quran, is the final prophet Muhammad now becomes necessary as an alternative to the spiritual and religious dead end into which Judaism and Christianity has led humanity. Now again, I'm not saying this is a Christian thought in any way, but what I'm saying is from their perspective, they see Judaism and they see an issue there. They see Christianity and then they see an issue there. And so then this is now God's final plan. All right? So later on, when St. John of Damascus is interviewing, where they're having this dialogue and they're going back, and he is now talking about the origins of the Nation of Islam, and he's talking about Muhammad, John of Damascus continues his discussion now in this polemic and talking about Muhammad, and sees that he is a pious man. But John Damascus says now, he, being Muhammad, says, there is one God, creator of all things, who has neither been begotten nor has begotten. All right? Except for the last statement, we would agree with that. We would agree there is one God, right? We would agree with that. We would agree that he is the creator of all things. We would agree with that, okay? Who has not been begotten, meaning he has no beginning, right? We would agree that God has no beginning. The only thing we would disagree with is nor has begotten. Because Jesus Christ, right, is not begotten, right? Yeah. He was not born of, he was not born of God. He is God. He is the second person of the Trinity, all right? Now, with respect to the Quran's view of Jesus, John Damascus writes, Muhammad says that Christ is the Word of God and His Spirit. We would agree with that. He is the Word, okay? So we would agree with that. And he goes on to say, Muhammad says, but a creature and a servant, meaning created, and that he was begotten without seed from the Virgin Mary. So they believe. So the answer, the long-winded answer to this question is that John Damascus does say that there is only one God. So this is the God of the Abrahamic people, which is the Jews, the Christians, and now the Muslims. However, when we get down to their differences, how they view the term Messiah, how they view the difference of the term Trinity, there is a Trinitarian concept in Islam, but it is not Father, Son, Holy Spirit. It is now God, Jesus, and the Virgin Mary. But it's not that God-like Trinitarian that we have, all right?
Yeah.
They don't believe that Jesus Christ was crucified and died. They believe that that was a shadow. We have actually that heresy of Sabellianism where he was something else. He was not really crucified, okay? They see Christ then as a final judge, but not as we see him as a judge. They see him as the last, he is the greatest prophet, greater than Muhammad, and that he will be there with God, but he is not necessarily the judge. And that Jesus Christ, for us, announces the coming of the kingdom, whereas Jesus Christ, for the Nation of Islam, announces the coming of Muhammad. So and again, I'm very, very short, seems short, it seems long, but he does a very good job of presenting the dialogue of St. John Damascus and of St. Gregory of Palamas, but at the end, there is one God which the three people of the Abrahamic covenant believe, but there are clearly differences after that. So I just want to talk about that.
So long story short, all three religions from the Abrahamic religions believe in the same Abrahamic God. Is that a way of saying it?
Yes, one God, creator of all things, unbegotten. So, and all of us would agree in that description of who God is.
Yeah.
But once we get into describing now God himself, Trinitarian versus, versus him sending a prophet versus a Judaic interpretation. Now we certainly have some differences that we have to talk through. And really, that's what St. John of Damascus spent his time on, not on God. He spent his time on now the differences of how Jesus is seen in the Islamic tradition.
How would you feel about having a roundtable discussion with a rabbi and an imam in something like this?
I think it would be interesting as long as the purpose of the discussion is not for one of us to convince the other that we're right. I don't think it, but I think what would be helpful is to understand the perspectives. This is why I really appreciated the book, is because it brought to light why the Nation of Islam thinks the way that they do. I don't have to necessarily agree with it, but I can see the stages that they went through so that they see now the last great prophet as Muhammad. I can understand that now a little bit better through their eyes.
Yeah. I think it would just be a cool discussion to observe and see how I don't know, if these three different perspectives that have this kind of unifying purpose, right? Kind of talk about things. I don't know. Tell us what you think.
Each one of them holds a Messiah's coming.
Yeah.
The Jews believe it, the Christians believe it, and then the Nation of Islam believes it. There is a coming of a Messiah. Who that Messiah is, how that's going to look, what role does Jesus serve in that? What purpose did Jesus serve? We all believe, yes, that Jesus existed in history, but who was he in history? Mm-hmm. That was another discussion, right? And then this Trinitarian idea, right? So I think you're right. I think that discussion would be very interesting. Again, as long as the purpose from the outset isn't
to convince one of the other. Yeah, something collaborative.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that. Did you have any other things you wanted to address?
No. Let's get to some questions. And as we move to the end, I've got a little discussion about original sin. But like I said, I want to get to some questions, and then we can return to kind of a dialogue. All right.
Sounds good. So the first question we have is from Nick, and he says, "Good evening, Father. What is the Orthodox view on prolonging life to one who is near death?"
And again, always got to start the Orthodox discussion with, it depends, okay? It always starts with, it depends. So I have seen different bishops, different metropolitans have different views on that. So again, unlike the Catholic Church, there is not a position paper that is written on, you want to prolong life? So I think we're touching upon euthanasia, right?
Sure,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. So there are some bishops that say, well, all bishops and the church would say that life, the end of life, is strictly God's decision. Okay? Any act that is taken to willfully accelerate that, suicide, injection, the Kevorkian method, all of that we would say would be against now what would be the canons of the church. However, there are bishops that I have met that believe that there can be then also the spiritual death of the person, meaning that, there's no brain activity, right? And that right now there doesn't necessarily have that if I want to say it this way, that their work here is finished. Okay.
Yeah.
There are other bishops that say, no, the fact that he is there and you're taking care of him is what your mission now becomes. Okay, so there's two different views there. So for the most part, if it is an older person or somebody that is suffering from clearly a terminal disease, there is obviously always the prayer for a miracle. That obviously you can always do that. Okay, so the only thing that the church would actually allow would be that the person die of their own accord, meaning that you can remove, let's say, the breathing mechanism, because if they can't breathe on their own, this may be saying now that God, lost my train of thought. It could be saying that God makes the decision about their breath and all of that, how long they can live. Okay. The slow denial of food, okay, so those are things that can be done because we don't want to induce undue suffering.
Yeah.
Now, if let's say you get married and both of you are in your 20s, and your husband gets into a car accident and the docs say, we have to do this surgery, there's a good chance that he's going to live, he's a young man, he's only 26 years old, and you say, no, it's the end of his life, now it's time to go. The church would not support that, okay? That's not end of life, okay? So in that case, we have to look at, who the person is. If they're 95 and they have heart issues and all of that, then we can see that it's okay for the family to say, let him expire naturally and let God take over.
So what about, I think maybe what Nick was getting at was what about prolonging life instead of a euthanasia kind of approach, right? So say someone their mother's on a respirator or something and they're brain dead kind of thing, and one could arguably say that they're being selfish by keeping them alive, right? And they're prolonging their life.
And so that's why I wanted to start with the discussion of euthanasia. Start with euthanasia. What is it about? What is the Orthodox Church think about ending that life? I personally have been involved in both cases where I have seen the family come and say, we think it's time. It's time for her to go, or him, wherever. But equally so, I have seen other cases, as Nick mentions, which is they've said, no, absolutely not. I want to prolong this person's life.
Yeah.
Okay. Where the church has an issue is what is best for the individual. Because what ends up happening sometimes is that the person is being kept alive not for their own purposes, but for the family member who now feels this guilt of saying it's time to let him go. The mere fact of saying, it's your mother, right? Let's say, it's your mother, and you have to say those words, let her go. And for some people, that's very, very tough because there is always that hope. the church cannot in any way, or should not in any way, interfere in that decision. It's the church's responsibility, my responsibility, to come to you and say, your mom's condition is such that they have to give her morphine. If she comes out of morphine, she's suffering. There's no brain activity. It is okay to let her go. All right. The church can do that, but in the end, the church cannot say, it's time to go.
Yeah.
You're out. So, but what can happen is that I have seen it tear families apart, because let's say you say, no, my mother has to live, and your brother says, it's time for her to go, and your sister says, no, it's time, and it creates this really, really difficult and heart-wrenching destruction of the family. And this is not at all what that person wants, would want. That's why, again, this whole living will thing is very important.
Yeah.
Because I can always go back to is this how she wanted to end her life? And then they say, well, the living will was, like my parents, don't put me on a respirator. If I need drugs, I want to go, So I already know what their wishes are. So it's a little bit easier for me if I'm put in that situation. But without that, now it's
complicated. It's
complicated, and I've even seen it difficult where they will hear the parent. I use the parent because usually it's the parent. They'll hear the parent say something. Today, I heard her. She opened up her eyes and she winked. That means she wants to stay alive. Again, I don't know. So the Orthodox, to end this discussion, or to close the parentheses on this discussion, I would say that you really have to look hard at who are you prolonging it for the person, or you're prolonging it for yourself.
Another question this has inspired in me is, so say someone has a living will and there's a DNR in there. Is that a form of suicide if it comes to
No, absolutely not, because the heart attack, let's say, was of natural causes. Whatever his or her symptoms were, they went into cardiac arrest. Okay, God is present in that moment, and He decides what will happen. And all that the DNR is saying is do not interrupt now possibly what God's plan is. That's a natural cause. The church has no issue with the DNR, and especially now if you see that person suffering.
For those who don't know, DNR stands for Do Not Resuscitate.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we can move on from this morbid topic.
But no, those are important. Those are important
yes.
questions, because I have to deal with those not on a daily basis, but there's many times I'm called into the hospital, and let me close also by saying that one of the things I found that's been very helpful to families, to siblings losing a parent, is the Orthodox Church has the prayer of the separation of the body and the soul. So they will come to me and they will say, Father, you have to see my father. Please come and see my father. He's not doing well. They don't think he's going to survive. I don't know what to do. Okay, so I'll go and we'll see his condition, and I'll say to them, do you want me to say a prayer? And they'll say yes. And I'll say, which prayer do you want? Do you want the prayer that he lives, or do you want the prayer of the separation of soul that we ask that God take him? And I will have to say that in many cases, the family chooses the prayer of the separation of the body from the soul. And it gives them an inner peace. The church is giving them permission to say, let God take over. And they really brings them peace. So
I hear you. So moving on through the chat, Stefan says, good evening, Father.
Good evening, Stefan. How we doing?
Reader Nick says, hi, Father Angelo. Can sacrament be annulled?
We don't have the concept, as I understand it, the concept of an annulment is to make it such that it never happened. The Orthodox Church does not have that. They can, like, for example, the wedding. The marriage. We cannot say that the marriage never took place. We can't, because it makes no sense to us. I mean, what we can say is that at the time that they were married, that flaw was not present. But it manifested itself later, and now by the church's economia, we are allowing now that couple to separate because there has been some type of spiritual death that has occurred. Not obviously the couple's death. So in that sense, we don't annul anything. We recognize that a flaw now exists that may or may not have existed in the past, which we don't really care.
Yeah.
All right. I'm trying to think. I mean, of the other sacraments.
I wish you can annul funerals.
Yeah, make them like they never happened,
Yeah,
right? That's funny because, that's half and half too, because sometimes they're like, oh, I'm glad he's gone. So sometimes, it's not. But I'm trying to think of, like, you wouldn't annul a confession, you wouldn't annul, obviously, Holy Communion, you wouldn't. I have had somebody ask me to annul a baptism. I have had that. They've asked me if the baptism was the wrong thing to do, and now I don't want the baptism to occur, and the answer is no. It has occurred. I mean, I can't change history. I'm not Superman where, the world spins in reverse, and yes.
Wow.
So I did have that one.
I've never even heard of that kind of concept before. Wow.
Just have them dry cleaned.
Oh, wow.
Just have them dry.
That's actually pretty funny.
Yeah, that's right. And as far as I know, there is no annulment of priesthood. You can return to a lay status, but in the eyes of God, you will be judged as a priest. So you can't even annul the priesthood.
Wow. So moving on in the questions, Bob's your uncle. I have to speak up more. Apparently, I'm being motioned to say things louder.
They want to hear your voice, right?
So Bob's your uncle says, "Good evening, Father. What would your advice be to a new catechumen? Catechumen. I can't say words. Coming from the Catholic faith and the struggles he would face."
And I've mentioned this before in a couple of these live segments, because the Roman Church grew up from a Roman legalistic and juridical type of setting, and the Orthodox grew up in a much more Eastern and mystical, not magical, but a mystical type of setting. I think the toughest thing is going to be the recognition that it's okay to not have an answer.
Yeah.
To be content that the answer to the question of what is the Orthodox position on is always it depends. Right.
Yeah.
Unless of course you're talking about, now I can point to icons now that I'm in the church. This is kind of cool. All right. Unless you're talking about like very dogmatic statements, right? Jesus is God. God exists in three persons. That he was born of the Virgin Mary. Other than those dogmatic statements, it really just, personal things just really depend. And so coming from that very regimented and juridical type of setting, it can be difficult to let go of all of that and just be comfortable in the fact that there is kind of this cloud of unknowing, and we don't necessarily have the answer to everything. I think once you can, and obviously I've seen quite a few families where there's a Catholic partner. Not that they want to become Orthodox, but they're happy being Catholic, and they've had to struggle with, the Orthodox answers to things that just don't seem to muster up to what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And original sin is one of those concepts, is because there is a very juridical type of application of original sin from that Augustinian tradition that we in the East don't have.
Yeah, I would, because I pretty much converted from Catholicism, even though I would say I didn't really take it as seriously as I take my faith now. But I would say that has been a really refreshing thing, actually, for me personally. That, it's okay to ask questions and have the answer be it depends, or I don't know, I kind of like that because it makes it gives you more room, I guess, you know what I mean? Whereas
Right.
You're kind of shoehorned into a certain sort of belief, and I don't know, to me, I personally don't want to see that or feel that,
Right.
So I'd say actually it's not I haven't faced many struggles from it.
Okay. Oh, yeah. That's a nice personal perspective on that. That
Yeah.
what struggles did you face? Let's say coming through that, and you kind of feel that there is kind of a freeing, a liberalization of
Yeah.
being able to shed some of that.
Yeah, and I feel like I have more room to like explore my spirituality and my beliefs in this kind of space compared to when I was younger and being raised Roman Catholic.
And then let's be fair here. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't.
no shade to
I don't
the rest
want
of my family.
I don't want to. I don't want to give the impression that we do not have strict Orthodox priests who turn people off.
Oh, of course,
I mean,
yeah.
so we have that too. But generally speaking, Orthodoxy in America and the American-born priests are able to embrace that very kind of mystical concept of Orthodoxy.
Yeah.
We do have tastier desserts during coffee hour, though.
We do, absolutely,
And
and
if-
we have a heck of a lot more incense.
And
We
if-
really know how to do incense.
If you're Catholic and you disagree, challenge accepted.
Challenge.
Show us your desserts.
Exactly right.
Show us your desserts. Yeah, I do like the incense a lot. But yeah, moving on in the questions. So Spiro, hi Spiro, nice to see you.
Spiro, hi again.
They say it's extremely hard to not judge or have contrary opinions to things that happen around us. Is all judging a sin? And how do we get to the point where we don't ever judge people and concepts?
Well, number one, as St. Paul says, we live in a world that is darkened by sin. Okay, so that's an impossibility. I mean, right now, being that as St. Paul would say, that Satan rules this age. Okay, we cannot become that perfected people. We strive for it, but we can't attain it. This is
Yeah.
why, for us, Jesus Christ is so important, because Jesus Christ is the bridge that brings us to God, because we can't do it on our own. That darkening of sin, and again, going back to that idea of original sin, the Orthodox Church sees it as a disease. So when I have a disease, I can't do what I want to do. I mean, if I'm a star athlete on an Olympic team, right, and all of a sudden I get gout, all right, I'm just not going to run as fast. It doesn't matter how much brain power and how much motivation I've got. I physically just can't do it. St. Paul says we are in that state. So we can't get past that. Now, this whole idea of judging, I want to be careful with that, because, again, I know, Jesus Christ, do not judge lest you be judged, and before you judge, remove the log from your eye. I get all that. I hear all that. Okay, but it is appropriate. It is appropriate to cast proper judgment, as St. Paul says, for the betterment of your brother or sister, right? Okay, so if my brother, let's say my literal brother, okay, well, actually, I don't have a brother, my little sister, okay, if she now starts taking drugs and starts drinking heavily, right, then I will come to her and say, you should not do this. This is not good for you. My attitude is not going to be, you know what, it's your life and you need to do what you want to do because I can't judge your lifestyle. No, hell no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to jump in and I'm going to be very judgmental and I'm going to say, you shouldn't be doing this. However, where we have a problem with judging is when I set myself above the person. Now we have a judgment. I'm not treating my sister like this, right? I'm saying, hey, I'm flawed. I get it. I understand. But here is the consequences of what you're doing. I'm talking to her like this. But you've encountered those judgmental people that say, for example, fasting. Really? Is that what you're gonna eat? So now you've raised yourself up.
Yeah.
Okay. So now this becomes now a sense of pride. When judgment becomes pride, now we're in a dangerous zone. That we can fix.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that says that we cannot judge. Jesus says, before you judge, remove the log from your eye. If you're smoking, and then I come up to you with a cigarette and say, you know what, smoke is bad for you, you shouldn't do it. Remove the log from my eye before I start. You've seen people like that.
Yeah.
The pot calling the kettle black kind of thing. Right.
Yeah.
So those are the types of things that he's saying. But it is okay for us to be judgmental through love, but not in this overbearing,
Over
prideful sense.
hierarchical way.
Right.
No, I appreciate that.
Does that make
perspective.
kind of sense?
I think that answers Spiro's question. And we just had, is it a super contribution or
Super chats.
a super chat?
We've had a super chat.
from Terry. Thank you very much for
We should jump to the super chat
your
first and then
donation.
catch up. Yeah.
Yeah, so the way this works is that when we receive super chats, we will respond immediately to your question. So feel free to keep them rolling so we can get to yours quicker. So Terry asks, the amount of fasting days in the Orthodox faith could be a challenge to catechumens.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah, that's
yes.
a challenge. Yeah, that is a struggle.
Yeah.
I will say that personally. Yeah.
And we do. I mean, if you take the three major fasting periods, which is Great Lent, the Advent fast, the Christmas fast, the 2-week fast that we're in right now,
Yeah.
the Apostles fast, and then the every Wednesday and Friday fast. I mean, 2/3 of the year
You're fasting.
You're
yeah.
fasting, right?
But you can like kind of notch yourself up to a strict fast, right? Like
Right.
you could start off like kind of more of a liberal fast, like just try to stay away from alcohol.
Again,
or
I'm going to go
something.
back to and again, I don't know what kind of magic Demos can do back there, but the paper that I wrote on the 3 levels of fasting,
Yes.
that's
yes.
on our website.
It's in our resources.
Yeah. So please go and take a look at that
Yeah.
because
There's also the video on YouTube.
the video the YouTube video that we did on that and again it addresses just that issue and and Terry brings up a good point is because hey I suffer through the fast too. I mean I go by Tim Hortons and I'm like getting a cup of coffee and then I see the ham and cheese and I'm like, oh man, I gotta get a ham and cheese black. So
At least we have coffee though.
I'm gonna put the link in the description. Can you mention that?
So Demos will put the link in the description, and what it does is through just experience, I've just created like 3 levels. The most severe and ascetic level, which would be the pure fast. Okay, a secondary fast that doesn't necessarily punish you for missing the fast, and then that fast where I'm just starting off. And it focuses more on the charity portion and the prayer portion, and so it's kind of like a ladder that you can build yourself up to.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't get yourself all distressed and in despair about fasting. That's what Satan wants. Satan wants you to see fasting as an ascetical practice, and if you eat that hamburger, you're going to hell, and so it's not even worth it to even stop. That's satanic kind of stuff.
Yeah, like I wanted to go into this Dormation fast, right? And like do a strict fast, and I've struggled with it, especially when like things are really testing you in life.
Yes.
And you don't necessarily have time, and maybe other people don't know you're fasting, so they're like, look at this delicious pepperoni pizza, and you're like, oh. But,
Or my favorite, and I've done this a couple of times too, is the fasting rule is if you've been invited to a house, right, then you don't insult your guest by saying I'm fasting,
Yeah, I'm
right?
fasting,
So
yeah.
you can't have that, so that you can eat that. But I've seen it, and I've been guilty. I try to be better now. Where I'll say, oh, well, what are you having? And they say, oh, well, you're having chicken, and I should be saying, well. Before I come over to the house, if there's an alternative, but I say, oh, well, that's what you're having, okay. So
Yeah.
I get invited over to a house where they're having really good stuff. I shouldn't be saying that out loud, but
yeah,
It's Greek food.
it's not lamb. It's not lamb, so it's good. It's
Yeah. So Nick is back. I'm now finally getting to the questions for after our small hiatus. Nick asks, "Hi again, Father Angelo. Do you believe that in heaven we will be able to rekindle old memories of both family and friends?"
So our support for that is the rich man and Lazarus, and in that we have Lazarus who is described as being in Abraham's bosom, and the rich man looks up and he says, can Lazarus dip his finger in the water so that I can have? And he says, no, there's this great chasm. And then the rich man says, and I know my research assistant can pull up the where in the Bible that is, so I read that. But what the rich man says is, he says, can he go back and tell to warn my family? So he has memories of he remembers who he is. Mm-hmm. And so from that, we do believe that we retain the memories that we had, because he calls out and says, then go back to my family. He doesn't say, well, okay,
Mm-hmm.
So he has those memories. So yes, I think we do believe that we will retain that.
Even bad memories?
That's a good question. Will we retain a bad memory?
I don't know. But bad memories can contribute to who you are, right? So without them, then who are you in heaven? And then are you a person deserving of being in heaven then?
Well, so again, we can't.
Iterative process there.
We
Sorry.
can't. Well, the easy answer to that, Luke 16:19. Luke 16:19. So, and I'm just gonna hear. 16:19. I'm just. So he said, Father, I beg you then to send Lazarus to my father's house. I have 5 brothers. Give them a warning so that they do not come to this place of torment. So he knows that he has the number of brothers even. So he has clearly then that memory. Mm-hmm. Now, we don't really have anything, and again, I'll take a look at that. But as far as I know, we don't have anything that talks about good, bad memory or bad memory. Getting back to your question, though, mm-hmm. None of us is deserving, right, to be in heaven. If we talk about the righteous God, and in fact, in the Good News, that was my August newsletter. It is, and Saint Simeon, the theologian, says we have no right to call him just, mm-hmm. because Star Trek, Captain Kirk, I need my pain because it makes me who I am. All right.
That's how I feel sometimes.
Oh shoot.
Captain Kirk threw you into the final frontier.
Yeah, you got me on Captain Kirk there. So we're talking about, again, just because he does not act in accordance with our actions. So from a judicial standpoint, okay, we cannot be worthy of heaven, right? So those people, I'm a little tangent here, those people that come up to me and they say, and I ask them, I say, I haven't seen you for communion in quite a while. And they'll say, well, Father, I just don't feel I'm worthy to receive communion. You're never worthy to receive communion. Ever, never, ever. My mom used to say that, well, I'm not worthy to receive communion today. You're never worthy. But medicine is not for healthy people.
Oh.
Medicine is for sick people. This is why Paul Tillich, one of the Protestant theologians, calls Holy Communion the medicine of immortality. He refers to it as, and even the Holy Fathers talk about it as being this pharmaceutical, pharmaca, okay? Mm-hmm. So they talk about it in that sense. And so it's only through Jesus Christ, through his intercession, and I shouldn't say intercession, but through his action of becoming man and bridging that gap of what happened with Adam, that we have the ability now to be saved, so that we can come into the kingdom of heaven. We never come into the kingdom of heaven because of our worthiness. We come in because of God's love.
Mm-hmm. So if communion, right, is like a medicine of immortality, right, and if we go back to, I think it was Nick's question on the Orthodox view of prolonging life, mm-hmm. is immortality the right word? Or is this tying back into the depends kind of situation? No,
because regardless of whether we prolong his or her life or not, mm-hmm. they will eventually die.
Yeah.
And just as Jesus died, right, then we will die. Because, again, the Orthodox Church sees now the consequence of the original sin as death entering the world, and the darkening of now our inclination. All right. So it is the medicine of immortality, because they will receive that communion, and that communion grants them or makes possible for them eternal life. Not this reality.
Not this one.
Right.
The other one. Okay. So to keep going on with the questions, Stefan is back and asks, is it a sin to watch TV series where people are swearing and living in sinful behavior? A second question could be, is it a sin to have friends which are swearing and rejecting Jesus, and how should I respond to them? I feel like they're related.
All right. So if we take Jesus's words right out of Mark, and he talks about that if the things that you see with your eye offend you, or what you do with your hand offends, then cut it off, because it is better to enter the kingdom of heaven with one arm or one eye than to go into hell a whole person. Okay, so I guess that's the starting point.
Yeah.
That's the starting point. Okay, so I wouldn't say that the sin is the TV program as much as where it leads you to.
Yeah.
The influence that it has upon you. All right, some people are stronger than others. Okay, and so that they can overcome that. All right, when I was in the military, Terry and I, she'll tell you that we had quite a few friends who cursed quite a bit, okay, and quite a few friends that engaged in activity that we would consider unethical, whether it was drugs or fooling around or things like that, and we had to disconnect from those friends because there was no good path that was going to come from that. Now, can I be the martyr, and can I say, I'll save you? I'll stay with you so that I can save you. You have to be very careful with that, because, again, as St. Paul says, that you are you strong enough that you can overcome that inclination? Or will you fall into that temptation? He warns the Corinthians of that when he visited them. So we have to be very careful in what is our ability. And so what I would say is that if your diet only consists of those kinds of programs, then you are leading yourself down a dark path. All right. Okay, could I call it a sinful path? Yes, but I think the better term is a dark path, because what's happened is, again, your relationship with God is supposed to be like this. You're always looking at God. The minute that something else enters your life and you begin to turn away from God, that's when the problems start. And that's what we would call sin, is this moving away from the face of God, we would call sin. And so, you sit down with your friends one time and you watch
Game of Thrones.
Well, I was thinking Casino.
Oh, what's Casino?
Oh, Demos.
Yeah, of course.
Sopranos, things like, kind of movies like that. All right, I get it. You sit down, you have a beer, you're watching some stuff, okay. But if that becomes your diet of movies and there's nothing moving you away from that, then you are entering into, let's call it then, sinful territory, because you're starting to turn yourself away from God. Same thing with friends. There are some friends that you're going to have to disconnect from, because they are an impediment to your salvation, okay? And you have to be very careful and make a decision about, are they, do I have the strength to overcome them and to save them? Now, certainly with a spouse, there's a close connection there, so you want to make every effort that you possibly can. But friends, that's another thing. I mean, we all have our free will, right? That's one thing that God's given us, and it's a double-edged sword. So sometimes they have to exercise their will.
Yeah.
But we must always be there in love for them. So when they reach the end of that road and they have nobody to turn to, they have you to turn to. They have us, who are part of God's family, that they can come back to us and we receive them. without this, without the judgmental action of, see, I told you you shouldn't have done that, or
Yeah.
now I'm going to save you, you dirty, loud, rotten, blah, blah, blah. Again, you're as sinful and they're sinful. You meet them then equally so. And that
Yeah.
brings them back to God. That's the love of God.
Yeah. Like one way I've been kind of thinking about this myself is thinking about what is and what isn't in my control.
Okay, yes.
Like that could
Yeah.
be a way to reframe it, right? That's what I'm thinking. Moving on in the question.
Control the things that you can.
Like you can't control other people, right? So
No,
you
no,
can only provide them resources or,
right.
yeah, I don't know.
And you can always be available to them in love. That's what you can do.
Precisely. So Benjamin says, "Look at that liquor. Looks nice." And
By the way, it's Scotch whiskey,
Scotch
not
whiskey,
liquor.
not
It's
liquor.
Scotch whiskey.
Scotch whiskey, Ben. But Ben has a question and asks, "I have a question if possible. I'm potentially looking to convert to Orthodoxy and would like to purchase a prayer robe and prayer book. Would I need to get a robe blessed by a priest?"
Only if it comes from Home Depot.
Wait a minute. R-O-B-E, R-O-P-E.
R-O-P-E.
Oh, okay. When you said
Rope? Sorry.
prayer robe, I'm like, okay, you shouldn't be wearing a prayer robe.
Yeah.
Okay, prayer rope.
Sorry, I think also like the P flipped in my mind. I don't know, sorry.
Okay.
But yes, P.
Okay, and so he's asking where?
Yeah, he's asking, should I purchase a prayer rope and prayer book? Would I need to get the rope blessed by a priest?
Normally speaking, we ask that you do get, and part of the reason that we ask that you do that is because the priest knows you and will recommend the prayer life that is appropriate for you where you are. It's not a good thing to just go to an Orthodox bookstore and start buying books.
Yeah.
Because again, it's like going in and buying cookbooks for things that you just aren't ready to cook yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well
So
said.
one, the prayer rope should be blessed for sure. That's number one. But it gives you a chance to dialogue with the priest and say, what do you think are the prayers that are appropriate for me? What kind of book should I be reading? And he'll provide that resource for you.
Yeah. Can you explain maybe to viewers that don't know, but what is a prayer rope?
Okay. So basically, the prayer rope, or what we would call the traditional koboskini. Okay, skini is a piece of string or a cord, right? And kobo is a knot. Okay, so normally the prayer rope will be a series of knots. All right, and so the idea with the prayer rope for the monks is that if we have the Jesus prayer, which is, there's a so I don't know if we can. Can we show that on the?
Let's see.
Will that show up?
Yeah, kind of. I think they'll get the idea.
So the idea with and prayer ropes can be they can be lulled too. This is meant to be worn on the wrist. But the purpose of the knots is when the monks are at work. Okay, they have this prayer rope in their hand and they're doing whatever activity they're doing, and you feel the individual knot. And with each knot, you say, "Jesus Christ, Son of God, save me, a sinner." You move on to the next knot, you move on, and there's usually a certain koboloi or koboskini. Okay? Right.
So like a koboloi is like that? Or?
I was wondering if there was a connection between a koboloi and a prayer rope.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Just like flip it.
yeah, okay, a koboloi is not a religious item.
Yeah.
Okay, a koboskini is a religious item because the knots represent you saying that prayer over and over again. So it's an indication. That's the prayer rope. A koboloi, that's more of just something that they spin around, and it's like a stress ball.
Yeah.
It's just something for you to do. It makes a sound. It's just something to, like if you're trying to quit smoking, right? You got the koboloi in your hand, you're spinning that around. But there's not a lot of times those things have the evil eye on them and stuff like that. And so that is in no way a religious item. It's just a Greek thing that we use to stress relief ourselves.
So what is the Orthodox take on the evil eye?
Oh.
Is there a take?
We actually answered that in one of our videos.
We did talk about it.
missed it.
We have a video on the evil eye. Okay, there is we do believe in the concept of the evil eye. What we do not believe in as Orthodox, and all the yayas out there are going to totally disagree with me, we do not believe that human beings have the ability to cast curses. These are demonic activities. What can happen is that if you believe that I can, then a demon can convince you and then throw you into despair.
Okay.
There are some cases where priests have found, and there's only special priests that can do this, that have found articles in the home that have taken on kind of a demonic character, and the person has suffered under that. Very, very rare cases. All right, but normally speaking, we do not believe that you as an individual person have any ability to cast a curse. But that power of suggestion and then a demon speaking to you and then putting you in despair, we 100% believe in that. So we have a prayer for the evil eye. So it is in the priest's handbook. Okay, but we don't find the person who we think is a witch and read it. We just read the prayer over the person to free them of demonic activity.
It's the video, Why Do Greeks Spit to Ward Off Evil Spirits? I put the link in the description.
Oh, good. All right. Thanks, Demos.
Thank you, Demos.
And what's so funny is the fact that some of the baptism bubuniera that they'll use, that's the little gifts that they have, they'll have a cross, and then right next to it they'll have the evil eye, which is like the most heretical thing possible. Okay, so let's put the cross and let's put the Greek evil eye, and we don't know who we believe in yet. So.
Elena asks via email, is Father part Italian? He uses his hands a lot, and that is how Italians speak with expression. As someone who's part Italian, I'm a little offended. I'm just kidding.
So anyway, Terry had me do the 1, 2, 3 and you and me and DNA 1, 2, 3 you and me.
23andMe.
23andMe,
Yeah.
something like that. Okay, and so coming from the islands, right, and being that I'm not that tall, of course I've got Italian blood in me. I mean, come on, the islands are right there.
Pretty much
so,
the same.
and
yeah.
it was the Roman Empire, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so I came out with some. What is that? Not Roman. My DNA came out with Persian, mostly Greek, and then some Italian. So
Cool.
you're right on there. Yep.
Wow.
La
What?
Salina.
Lena.
Oh, Lena.
Secretary.
Oh, the secretary. Yes, yes, and she's a good influence too because she's all Italian. So.
Awesome. And then Ben asks, are we allowed to ask more than one question? And I guess our account responded yes, but we politely ask not too many at once. We do have live shows every week, blah, blah, blah. You know the drill.
Give everybody a chance.
Give
right.
everyone a chance. So Trey Morris asked what book that was. So if you want to repeat for folks.
So, Two Traditions, One Space by Father George Papadimitriou.
It's in the description.
Oh, it's in
yeah.
this? Okay.
It's good to say it anyway. Sorry.
But yeah, yes, very good book though.
Yeah. So going on. So Tira says, good evening, Father. What is the Orthodox view on work life when you have a family compared to when you don't have a family?
Well, in either case, I'm going to go back to this example. In either case, when anything causes you to move your eyes away from God, we consider that sin, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, work clearly falls into one of those categories, okay? So when your work becomes the idol, it not only takes you away from God, but it takes you away from the family, right? Okay, some people, and unfortunately this has happened too many times in the church, I have seen people with families be very cruel and judgmental to people that do not have a family and say, well, why aren't you working harder? Or why can't you do this? You know, because I've got a family, I've got kids, and I've got a wife, and you're a single guy, so why aren't you working 3 times as hard? I mean, or why aren't you helping out at the church more? You know, again, just because you have a family does not give you any greater right or any greater ability than another person, okay? Now, the church would agree that what are you doing with the time that you have, okay? So if it turns out, right, that you both have the same type of job, unless you're a factory worker, right? Okay, when you come home, you have the ability then to do something else. It doesn't mean you have to do that, okay, but if you have the time now to offer services, to go Habitat for Humanity, to operate at a food bank or something like that, okay, then I think that that's a valid question, you know, to do something. I mean, nobody should be just every day coming home, sitting at married or not, or with kids or not, going home, sitting at the TV and watching 6 hours of TV,
Yeah.
right, and doing that. They shouldn't be doing that. Okay, but we want to be careful that we don't get into a distinction between, you know, how much should a single person work versus how much should a family
Yeah.
person work. What we should be looking at is, are they utilizing the talents that they've been given to God? And is work becoming such a prideful thing that it becomes the idol?
That makes sense. So it seems like we're going to go on for another 20 minutes if folks are okay with that, and we're going to make it a lightning round.
Lightning
So
round, okay.
We
Oof.
apparently want you to answer these questions as quickly as possible.
We have a lot, so.
Yeah.
Didn't they just say that I'm part Italian, and part Greek? So all I do is talk with my hands.
It's
Yeah,
okay.
but you live near Clearwater, the lightning capital of the world.
Oh my god.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
So Aaron says, Aaron 88205 says, "Good evening, Father. My mother at times will sometimes, as for the intercessions of Roman Catholic saints, is it okay or should she stop? They're converts from Catholicism for the past 11 years now."
Okay. And so she's just asking for the intercessions from Catholic saints?
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Fine.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's okay?
that's okay. That's fine. You know, again, there'll be Orthodox, and why aren't they praying to Orthodox saints? And again, if that's a tradition that they've come from, and the saint is a canonical saint of one
Yeah.
of the churches, we're not talking about heretical saint.
Yeah.
If they're a canonical saint,
Okay. And then it's reader Dr. Nick again. Can you comment on the Orthodox concept of how one is proclaimed a saint?
it is, well, what I can, lightning round. I can comment and tell you that it is not in any way as formalized as the Catholic process is. So I don't have the exact process, but we are a very grassroots-based sainthood, meaning that the church will respond to the people. The church doesn't pick a saint. Okay, most cases, the people will report the miracles of that saint and say to the church fathers, this person has done great things, and he is or she is worthy now of sainthood, and then the church will take that on and they will examine them. But we don't have a prescribed number of miracles that you have to have performed, or you have to live in a certain place or done certain things. If the people feel that this person has been influential and has shown the grace of God, has displayed the grace of God, and they have verified those things, then they are on the path for sainthood. So there's not the detailed regime that we would have with the Catholic Church.
So are there like modern day saints that we know of?
Yeah, Saint Nectarios is one. Saint Nectarios is a 20th century saint. He was attributed to many cures of cancer, and in fact he was what's the term when you're expelled? when they cast you away to an island, they exile.
Exile, yeah.
Right. So he was exiled, but he came back and he became very influential in the church. Served as a bishop. Many cures of cancer were attributed to him, and so the Orthodox Church made him a saint.
So did that happen while he was still alive, or
No.
after he passed?
No, it would be
After
right,
they
right.
passed.
You would have to be in the church triumphant, not the church militant. Again, church triumphant is you have passed on, you have died, because now you have, as
You've
St. Paul would say,
triumphed.
you've triumphed, so
Yeah.
to speak, right? And militant means we are struggling and suffering
We're
and fighting
trying.
for our faith.
Saint Paisios.
Oh, and that's right, Saint Paisios, a good, and he's a fairly recent saint in the what 90s? 96.
Ah, very cool.
2015? Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Wow, okay.
Super cool. Yeah, moving on. Marmar says, hello, can you explain the Orthodox beliefs for when someone dies? What happens to their soul immediately after and later as well? Thank you.
Again, lightning round answer here. We don't know. Okay, we don't know with any certainty what happens. What we can say is that through the fact that we do the 3-day, the 9-day, and the 40-day memorials. Okay, the small T tradition is that for those first 9 days, the person is receiving their foretaste of both hell and the kingdom of heaven. So they're seeing that foretaste, and then after that's why that 9 days is so important, because according to small T tradition, at the end of that 9 days, then they either, and again, there's debate on, do they go to sleep until the second coming, or are they alert and awake, and are they able to intercess for us? So there's discussion on both sides. So that's about all we can really say at that point. Again, we've had a lot of questions on the toll booths and things like that, but there's really no Orthodox confirmation of that. That is a certain group of monks that sees that particular tradition. So.
Jeremiah 209 says, hello, Father Angelo. I'm a low church Christian and have really enjoyed finding these Q&As. I have learned a lot about different Christian traditions. Yeah, you're welcome, Jeremiah.
Good. And what I would say is don't stop learning, okay? When you think you've learned enough, as St. John Climacus would say, go back to the bottom of the ladder and then start again, all right?
So Tina asks, why does the Russian Orthodox cross have this slanted bar towards the bottom of the cross?
So the idea is that was the footrest. Okay, so they placed they placed his feet on that footrest. We don't necessarily have evidence for that. I mean, there's a question about did that exist. The idea is that when Jesus Christ finally gave up his spirit, that with a final jerk he pushed his foot down and it twisted down. It slanted down. So that's an expression of his final physical act.
So Anthony from Sri Lanka is back, and he says, hi, Father. I go to Catholic school, and we have to learn Catholic study. So is it okay even if I am Orthodox?
So we have, even here in America, great question. Even here in America, and in all of the parishes I've served, we have many families where the children go to Catholic school because one, they want prayer, they want God-based education, okay, and they feel that they get a better quality of education. Again, I'm not going to make a statement on the public schools, but that's what they want. There are only, as far as I know, there are only 2 Orthodox schools that take you through the 12th grade here in America. So we don't have that many Orthodox. We would love to do that. That's a great thing, but they don't have a choice. So what I tell the parents, and what I'm saying here is, there is nothing wrong with with a Catholic education. However, it needs to be tempered with Orthodox theology. So, original sin, right? The role that Mary plays, the idea of the Pope, the fact that the Catholic Church is not the universal church. All of us are the universal church. So as long as you have somebody like a priest or a monk or some educated layperson that you can bounce questions off of and say, hey, is this Orthodox? And then the other thing I would say is that, again, it would still be inappropriate to receive communion if you are Orthodox in a Catholic or a Protestant church.
So I've been told before that people I know who have gone to Catholic church and or not Catholic, well, Catholic school and are Orthodox, that they've been told not to participate in the prayers. What do you say to that? Or
Again, all Catholic prayers include Jesus, include God the Father, and include the Holy Spirit. Okay, I don't see any. Again, the act of communion, of receiving communion, implies that I also subscribe to the beliefs of the Catholic Church. Okay, this is why we ask that you don't receive communion, because you don't. As Orthodox, we do not subscribe to the precepts of all the precepts of the Catholic Church. Again, it's the parent's responsibility to look at the prayers that are being said. If the prayers are offensive to the Orthodox faith, then it is appropriate for the parent to go to the priest, which I've advised my parishioners to do. Go to the priest or go to the head of the school and say, I would prefer that my child not say this prayer. Okay, I don't know of many prayers like that, okay, but I think that there's nothing wrong with the parent having a discussion with the schoolmaster or the priest and saying, I just want to see what they're praying. I have a right to do that, and then I can show that to my priest, and my priest says, yeah, okay, those prayers are fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Or I would prefer that they don't say that prayer, and then that's it. Don't let the child make those decisions. The parent has to make those decisions.
Yeah. So you did that lightning round very well. So you did it in about 10 minutes, and I think you had something you wanted to say about, was it original sin?
How much time do we have?
Go for it.
So
we're not going to take any more questions
from this point. However, what I think next week we're going to do something a little bit different.
Yeah, next week we're going to do a double feature, 2 hours of Q&A starting at 7 Eastern time. So that means we'll be ending around 9.
So a little experiment to see kind of how all this goes. So how did we do with an 8 to 9? Did it Demos? Did it work out pretty well? I mean,
yeah.
Okay. So we got some people in there.
Yeah. Once again, we're sorry that we had the internet connectivity issues at the other location. So thank you all for sticking by.
So I'm happy that the questions are requiring now some more research, because you all have reached the limits of my intelligence, which is not really that far. So there's quite a bit of research to do, which is good for me. It's always good to sharpen the sword. And like I said at the beginning, for those of you that missed it, I also want to be careful again that I try to limit my discussions to the Orthodox Church here in America, because I know that around the world there are some difficult situations with the Orthodox churches around the world. And again, if you don't live in the country, you don't understand the fullness of the dynamics of what's happening there. So I just want to be cautious to that. I am very appreciative of the comments that I've received for some statements that I've made that have not necessarily been right on par. So that's been a great education for me. So I need that. That's great, and I really appreciate that research that was done, and so that kind of helps me out. Tell you what, why don't we do this? How about I open next session then, because we'll have a little bit more time. Let me open that with the discussion on original sin, because like the discussion about Islam, it's going to take a little bit more than just like 5 minutes.
Well, let's end with something positive, like the salami and sausages that we received.
Oh yes, okay. So I've been really grateful that you all have been seeing whiskey, or I've been talking about restaurants or things like that, and so I did receive. I did receive from one of the from a group of people that have been watching me. I received a bottle of whiskey.
Wow.
Yes, one of the whiskeys that I advertised. And it was like 2 days later, I got this box in the mail of all of these Greek goodies. I got Lucanico sausage. I got a couple of different pastichos. I got a cheese in there. I'm trying to think of what else. But it was this whole care package of just, Greek goodies.
Wow,
It
that's so
was
nice.
Tina Asimos and Catherine Fahn. And there was a third person, and I can't recall now who that was. It was Tina, it was Catherine, and there was one more. And I got to look back on the card and see. But I'm so grateful for that. People are recognizing now. I'm going to start to get Italian food, so that might be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Some nice pepperoni sausage and all that.
Some lasagna.
Ooh, and we've also got another thing that we're going to be trying as we move forward. A little take off on the whiskey. I have been challenged to a hot sauce contest. I have not met yet a hot sauce that I don't like, or that has been greater than what I can handle. So I'm gonna take on the best of the hot sauce people here. So that's another contest we're going to be having. So
Yeah. It will be titled Orthodoxy Questions Answered, the Spicy Edition.
the spicy edition, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
The Spicy Edition.
All right. Again, Marissa, thank you so much for being the host. Thank you to Terry, the researcher, and obviously then Demos for taking all this production problems that we had,
Yeah,
and
or
then still being
producer.
able to produce it and put on a show. This has been
Yeah.
great. Good night, all.